Good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers and then we will start our today's class. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhavaswaha, Tat Savitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahe, Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat, Asto Ma Sadgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamya. Om Sehna Bhavatu Sehna Bhunaktu Saviryam Karvavahi Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidveshavahi. Om Shanti 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 Om. This mantra which we recite every day, if you don't know the meanings, we do have a recording in one of the Wednesday's classes about the meaning of these mantras. Because when you know the meaning, it really makes more sense. Why do we recite the mantras before these classes? Okay. So today's topic is Bhavna. Bhavna is the most important factor leading to our spiritual evolution. In fact, Bhavna is the source of all that is good and beautiful in society, culture, and all relationships. This is a Sanskrit term which implies feelings, not just the feelings, feelings blended with attitude, a quality of the heart. If you possess positive bhavna, a feeling that is positive and sublime, you will see that you are moving on the spiritual path with rapid strides. But if you possess a negative bhavna or a degrading feeling, your movement will be impeded. Bhavna is also the secret behind the formation of karam. So what you do externally in itself does not carry much value, but the attitude with which you perform any action gives value to that action. And that is bhavna. You may do things, but if you do not approach your actions with a selfless yogic attitude, you create many karmic entanglements. On the other hand, when you have a proper attitude, proper feeling, even though you may be doing little things, you are bringing about a great change in yourself. There is a very interesting story about a sannyasi who resided in a big building in the city. Across the street was another building, which was inhabited by worldly people, with one particular room taken by a prostitute. Although he did not want to look in that direction, but each time the sannyasi got up in the morning, his mind led him to do so. Whenever he saw anyone going into her room, his mind became agitated with the feeling of remorse for their lost and fallen souls. This way, his day was filled with distraction and also frustration. Neither could he move away, nor could he ask her to move away from their apartments. Though the lady had been a prostitute to begin with, she was now changing her lifestyle and aspiring to be better. Each time she looked towards that sannyasi's window, she thought how fortunate she was to be able to have his darshan. And when people came to her apartment, she tried to impress the need of spirituality upon them. As the time passed, both the sannyasi and the lady got old. And curiously enough, both of them died on the same day. The sannyasi naturally was expecting to given the highest level of heaven. But to his great surprise, he was sentenced to the lowest level. While reflecting upon his predicament, he saw the soul of the street lady pass by. All around her, celestial beings were honoring her. Not only that, a celestial chariot awaited to take her to higher plane. He asked the Yamduts, "Aren't you making a mistake? A person such as that street lady should be rotting in hell." A Yamdut stepped forward. He said, "Well, since you knew her on earth, why don't you ask her yourself?" So the sannyasi approached the lady. She was delighted to see him and said, "I am so thankful to you. Because of you, I will ascend to the higher worlds. Each time I saw you, my mind rejoiced that God had placed me in the presence of such a wonderful, holy person. The reason for your downfall is that when you looked at me, your mind moved towards worldly and negative thoughts. You went on generating negative impressions. I, on the other hand, was generating positive impressions due to my bhavna." So you can see that from this story. Bhavna is the feeling arising from your unconscious impressions. If negative impressions dominate your unconscious, your feeling will be cramped. A mind dominated by negative impressions always sees the negative in others and tends to judge others in a gross and negative manner. Because we see through the glasses which we wear, and these are the mental glasses. On the other hand, when you promote feelings of goodwill, you generate positive impressions in your unconscious mind, and which in turn change your entire personality for the better. As you advance on the spiritual path, you learn how to develop and promote these positive feelings through satsang. That means company of the good people, noble people. Study of the scriptures, which is swadhyay. Practice of meditation, which is dhyana. And selfless service, which is seva. So that's why satsang, swadhyay, dhyan, and seva, they should be part of our life. All these enable you to change your personality and allow your mind to draw positive impressions. They must be practiced with great diligence and perseverance, however. Also understand that bhavna is not imagination. Although imagination is slightly involved, when you promote positive bhavna, for example, You develop the feeling that God is in everyone. Not only in everyone, but in every object. And in practical life, however, that bhavana should not interfere with your day-to-day realities. You have to be practical about it. For example, even though you worship God in fire, when we do the yajna, it doesn't mean you can stick your hand in it. In the name of bhavana, do not open your doors at night and invite the whole world in and place your jewelry out in the yard, hanging it on the trees. Be practical. Because this is not the teaching of the scriptures. The development of bhavana is an internal development. Although it changes your personality, it does not affect your practical realities. Great emphasis is given in yoga on developing bhavana. The Yogi Guru says, bhavana is your treasure. What matters is not the world in which you live, but the way you look at it and what your attitude is. Every action you perform with a higher feeling will take you on a greater merit, and it will become a potent force in purifying your mind. Bhavana is of two types, which is according to the three guns. Gunas are modes of nature. We are familiar with those. Satvikta, which is called purity and harmony. Rajsikta, which is restlessness and externalization. And tamsikta, which is inertia or dullness. These are the three guns. So according to these three guns, bhavana can be divided into two categories. Rajasic and tamasic bhavana are of a negative nature, and they come under the category of ashubh bhavana, impure feeling. For whom? For a practitioner, for a sadhaka. For example, if you feel delighted because someone gets in trouble, that type of feeling in your heart is rajasic or even tamasic. If your happiness depends upon proving your greatness before others by putting them down, that type of feeling is also ashubha, impure. Rajasic bhavana is based on desire, anger, greed, jealousy, pride, and other impurities in a mild state, but still they are impurities. And we have been talking about these for the last few weeks. Desire, anger, greed, jealousy, pride. Tamasic bhavana develops when these impurities become intense. So differences in the intensity between the tamasic and the rajasic. When they assume the form of revenge, violent wrath, intense passion, inordinate greed, etc. They become tamasic. Contrary to these, Shubh or Satvik Bhavna is based upon humility, goodness of the heart, contentment, devotion to God, and sublime experiences of dhyan and even samadhi. In order to advance on the path of self-realization, then you should promote Shubh Bhavna and eradicate Ashubh Bhavna. Shubh or Satvik Bhavna is the most precious treasure for a sadhaka. There is immediate joyousness the moment such bhavna surges in your heart. Ashubh bhavna, the negative bhavna, contracts the heart. It brings about a feeling of internal suffocation. However, developing sattvic bhavna is not an easy task. We all know moving up takes effort. Sliding down is easy. You need to be persevering. You need to be forgiving. You need to be patient as well as enduring. I'm sure you all remember the story between the saint, his disciple, and the scorpion. Scorpion kept coming, biting the saint. The disciple was watching. And he asked the Guru, why don't you just kill this scorpion? He said, that is not my nature. That could be a nature of the bug or an animal, but not a nature of the saint. The story tells us that hatred is not the answer when dealing with those who are constantly stepping on your toes. Most people think that the moment someone gets in their way, the simplest solution is to develop ill will towards him. But that is not the right solution. That's not a yogic solution. Even though it may seem easy to crush the other person, sometimes it even feels justifiable to develop a sense of animosity towards people like that. And on that basis, people harm each other or even take a delight in seeing somebody else being crushed. But from a yogic point of view, such behavior is degrading because it maintains impressions of hatred in your heart, which causes further ashubha bhavna. Because when hatred overpowers your personality, you have actually failed as a human being. In the divine plan, such failure is not allowed because you will need to be born again in order to learn to love the person you hated in this life. And that might take several lifetimes. So that's why goodwill must be promoted towards people who are crude and who, like the scorpion, repeatedly hurt others. Let them do what they want. You must develop an understanding that God abides in all. Because that's what the scriptures say, that's what the gurus say. Keep on repeating. It is due to your own karma that certain people become responsible for causing agitation in your personality. So this was about Bhavna. How do we move from Bhavna to Bhav? Because there's a difference between Bhavna and Bhav. Feeling becomes like a stagnant river when it is overpowered by Rajas and Tamas, by hatred, greed, restless desires of the mind, selfishness. And we all know that this state is degrading for the soul. It's almost like you may possess great estates surrounded by wonderful gardens with the numerous flowers over there. But if the flowers of the divine virtues do not bloom in your heart, if your heart has become a field of containing negative feelings, a Shubh Bhavna, then all your external attainments become insignificant. An aspirant must therefore employ great vigilance in cultivating a higher form of feeling, which is free of ego, which is dominated by Satvikta, purity. A Satvik Bhavna, and again, Satvik Bhavna is based upon compassion, selflessness, goodness of the heart. Remember that. A Satvik Bhavna is developed, it gradually becomes concentrated into what is known as Bhav, divine feeling. Bhav is a divine feeling. So Bhavna can be two types, Shubh and Ashubh. But Bhav, that is divine. It is a divine feeling that is offered to God. Not only offered to God, it links you to Him. It has that kind of a power. Bhav. So both Bhavna and Bhav are feelings. But one is diffused like a humidity in the atmosphere, and other is concentrated like a cloud. So that is the difference. Or you can understand in the yogic terminology, the difference is very similar to that between dharna and dhyan. In dharna, the mind is being focused. In dhyan, the focused state continues. So satvik bhavna, you are making or putting a lot of effort into day-to-day life, hour to hour. You want to make it positive. You want to live a sattvic life. Effort is being put, thus like in dharna, effort is put to concentrate. But when it becomes a bhav, it's being connected with God, just like in dhyan, you are being linked with the divinity. So in the state of bhavna, feeling is being focused and withdrawn from the outer world and directed towards God. Because God is in everybody and everything. So instead of focusing on the negative attitude of the people, you focus on the God in them. And when that focus becomes so strong, it becomes bhav. In the state of bhav, the intensified feeling flows spontaneously. On the path to God, bhav is the great secret. Let me tell you, ordinary feelings cannot capture God. Only the intense feelings can. When people read books of devotion, their normal sentiments are aroused. When we read the stories in the Purans or the Itihas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, sentiments do get aroused. When we pray with a melting heart, we even shed tears or plead. And after a while, when our prayers are not answered, we wipe our tears. And sometimes we think that our prayers have been wasted. That is a bhavna. You got sentiments, divine sentiments came, but you wanted certain kind of a result, you did not get the result, and then you just move it away. But bhav is of a different nature. It arises in a person who has a genuine feeling that God is all. He is the soul of the soul, the object of supreme love. This type of sincere awareness develops in a personality which is highly integrated and which is free of ego. That's why we were talking about those enemies, and one of the enemy was what? Ego. That enemy does not let us connect with God. In a devotee who has developed bhav, just hearing the name of God or thinking about a saintly person brings about a sense of thrill. There's only love and love in that devotee's heart. Mind doesn't go anywhere else. That is a ras of bhav. We are all practitioners, sadhaks. We must discipline ourselves through satsang, through karam yoga, seva. We need to embark on a rigorous overhauling of personality in order to allow our heart to capture divine feeling, which is bhav. We don't want to stay in the middle. Sometimes rajasic, sometimes tamasic, sometimes sattvic. We keep on just fluctuating. No. This time around, we want to make sure that we reach, with the help of the sattvic bhavna, towards this bhav. Bhav is attained through some devotional attitudes. given in Bhakti Yoga. You are familiar with Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. But in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna said that through bhakti, through devotion, my devotee can attain me. I become his. So that's why we have to understand what these devotional attitudes are. There is a Shant Bhav. Shant means peaceful. There's a Dasya Bhav, the servant. I am God's servant. There is a Sakha Bhav. God is my friend. Vatsalya Bhav. God is my child. Madhurya Bhav. God is my beloved. In the scriptures, especially in Bhagavad Puran, we see all these bhavs explained beautifully. The gopis of Vrindavan, Madhurya Bhav. Yashoda Maiya, Vatsalya Bhav. The friends of Krishna, Sakha Bhav. And in Ramayana we see Hanumanji, Dasya Bhav. Bhisham Pitama, Shant Bhav. When Lord Krishna came to kill him, he became peaceful. Go ahead, kill me. I want that. We can develop any one of these attitudes towards God. And we can experience unparalleled bliss. Normally, we try to get happiness from this material world. But the happiness or the bliss we get through these bhavs, there are no words for it. That special feeling that gathers in your heart is bhav. And the joy experienced is known as rasa, nectarine delight. And next week, I will continue from here to explain a little bit more of these different attitudes in Bhakti Yoga. But today, just remember, we talked about Ashubh Bhav, which is Tamsik definitely, but Rajsik also. Because it doesn't take much for the Rajsikta to take the color of Tamsikta. So we got to make an effort from the Ashubh Bhav to Shubh Bhavna. Okay, so Ashubh Bhavna to Shubh Bhavna. And ultimately, with the help of love for God, change that Sattvic Bhavna to Bhav. And feel this bliss. So we'll continue from here next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.